Now today we're here, why are we here? It's not just because we have a fun filming of screening of the film Paris is Burning, but we are celebrating Black History Month. We are celebrating upcoming International Women's Day, and we're also celebrating the International Transgender Day of Visibility, right? So this film kind of crosses over in allowing us to think about and interrogate these spaces and how they come to be. Now, while we are giving space to celebrating the art of performance and drag and trans, we also need to be a little bit critical of how these spaces came to be framed. So hoping that when you see this film, you have that in mind about power structures, what's being told, who's telling the story, what stories are left out, and why. Why are these marginal communities out there, and what does it represent about a deeper past, a deeper racialized history? So I know there's a lot there, but just to give you a little few thoughts before you enjoy the film, to have a critical lens on this, and also to not be just a gaze. So Bell Hooks, she has a book called Black Looks, and she did a chapter on this film, and she talks about how we as spectators are gazing into the dark others, she says, right? And what does that mean? So are we perpetuating that gaze here by watching and celebrating the beautiful bodies moving? What's behind it that we need to talk about, right? We need to talk about these intersections of how race, class, and gender all get intertwined and get framed. And we need to really interrogate how we view non-binary bodies in context to Asia too. So we've had this really critical conversation that's going to be happening immediately after the screening. So we hope that you'll stay and have questions for our wonderful guests.
Filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker, I just want one more question before I open it up to the panelists and our students here, is that the power of production, your lens, your power to access this, and the politics of framing, because we all know that you can have all the footage in the world, we have everybody's stories. How do you select what to put in the film and what gets left out? And so as a documentary filmmaker, how do you navigate these spaces, and can you share a little bit about that process of
I mean, I also do want to say though that a lot of Asian films, like queer films, like really did speak, like we did speak across continents, like films like Shinjuku Boys or Happy Together. I mean, there are films that I think it's called, anyway, I think it's Broken Blossoms, or anyway, it's a film about like three queer people, which I think it was shot in Hong Kong. But so I do feel like there, I don't want to I just think there's been a lot of great queer imagery out of Asia that's been important to me. I think in terms of selection, when you make a documentary, you work with an editor, and you and the editor's like a co-writer, so you're looking at all your footage, and you're first of all just seeing what's strong. You make your initial selects what's strong, and then you start to see, what are things that talk to other things, what's coming up here. As the director, you're making initial decisions, who am I shooting, what am I shooting, when am I shooting? Like I knew with the balls, there were particular things that really interested me and particular things less so, mainly because of what interested me about the ball world. Another person making film at the time might have made a really different film. And so you're in the cutting room, you're looking at what starts to talk to other things. And then you start to say, okay, here are the characters I'm interested in. Here are the people who are coming up as strongest. Here are the themes that are coming up. Like, what are the themes? The themes are, racism. The themes are materialism. The themes are a house as a family. And then you start to categorize things according to character, according to theme, according to story. And then you begin to really work with, how things fit with other things and what the structure is that's emerging. And it's quite intuitive, but it's also structural, and it's formal, and it's actually really exciting, because when you're making a dramatic film, you might read stuff, you might meet people, and then you start to take notes, and then you write a script. When you make a documentary, you collect real stuff, but then you're essentially making a story from the real stuff, and you're really constructing something that can work with a beginning, middle, and an end. And it takes typically, takes a year or two to really build something that works.
Correct. And I think the key word is construction. And it's interesting because we can think about how gender is a construct, race is a construct, history is a construct. And, it's all this comes together in the art of filmmaking.
During the filming, did you view this as an act of allyship? Were those conversations that were being had either during production or in post-production? And when did this idea of allyship really come to mind? Or maybe when was it terminology that was first told to you as the act in which you're doing?
I mean, that word was definitely not used in the early 90s. Yeah. I didn't hear it. I think I was more traditional as a filmmaker, just like it was documentary. People were having an opportunity to tell their stories. I guess I felt like a queer amongst queers. I was becoming a queer person as I was, making this film. I was also an AIDS activist, so that was more like really being an activist to change policies. I guess I certainly never felt like, well, I'm becoming a member of the ball community. It was very clear I was an outsider. But I also felt that, I spent a couple of years interviewing people, before I had the resources to shoot too much footage. And I really felt like people really wanted to tell their stories. And I just felt infused with a sense of mission in a way as a filmmaker that the stories needed to be told, and the stories were not only significant for the people from the ball world and from adjacent communities of queer people of color or trans people to see themselves reflected, but also really for the whole world to see, what a strong, important, vital community.
Can you tell us a little bit about, because I know I read somewhere that you had initially kind of stumbled onto this story, you encountered it by chance. Maybe tell our students here at Hong Kong University what your process, how did you stumble on it? What made you feel that this was a story deserving of telling? And more importantly is how you gained their trust to tell their such intimate, raw stories with you.
Yeah, so I was trained as a photographer at Yale, and it was more a slow process of becoming a filmmaker. But at the time, I was taking a summer class in filmmaking and had my camera, as I usually did. And I just really, by chance, met some Voguers in Washington Square Park in Manhattan. And they were posing around a tree, and I just asked if I could take their photograph, and they were saying category names like Sex Fifth Avenue, mannequins, and Witch Queen and drags, and I didn't know what that was, but I knew that they were pretty beautiful, and so I asked what they were doing, and they said, we're voguing, and if you want to see more voguing, you should go to a ball. So I went to a ball, really just this kind of weird to do an assignment for this summer filmmaking class I was taking. I never studied film. I didn't study it as an undergraduate, and was just blown away. And I was a young queer, genderqueer kid, and I was like 21, and I just was blown away and really attracted to how much fluidity there was and how much energy there was and how much eloquence and beauty there was. So I just started to go as a photographer. And then eventually in time, I thought, this really isn't about still images. It's about people, what they have to say, a culture that is really strong and really vibrant and relevant.
Hi, my name's Alice. Before you were able to join the call, we briefly touched on the idea of people telling stories, which some might argue aren't their stories to tell. So I was just wondering if you've received criticism for telling a story of a community you don't belong to, being white and telling the story of people of colour, and if so, how you've responded to that criticism and whether or not the criticism is there was criticism when it was first released, so the contrast between now and back when the film was released.
I think that the criticisms evolved later. I think at the time, the critics of color who wrote about it didn't have an issue. They just thought the film itself told the story well. I think later on there was a critique that, you know, white people shouldn't do that. I think that in general, though, if you look at who makes films, there's generally not a one-to-one correspondence between who makes a film about something and who they are. I mean, as I said, 94% of the films in general release are directed by men, and they typically are telling stories of women. So I feel like the issue of whether or not we as filmmakers are telling stories is separate from whether or not there should be more opportunity for everyone to tell their own stories and to tell whatever stories they want.
Do you have anything else you would like? I know it's so late for you, and we really, really appreciate your time here.
No, but I think that I have to see if Chiquita's going to do something. I have to stay, right?
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Okay, so let's prepare for the Chiquita's performance, and you should be able to.
Fashion is the art, designers are the gods, models play the part of angels in the dark. Which one of you will ever dare to go against? That beauty is a trade, and everyone is paid a fashionista. How do you love fashionista? How do you love Tokyo, I think it's in Japan. Asia, Las Vegas to play. LA, if you feel the way, I should be YSL, Ferragamo, and Chanel. Ocean, Gucci, Fiorucci, don't forget my Gucci. Fendi and Armani, God, I miss Gianni. Cannon Ford, Michael Kors, Mr. Ford, I can't afford. TNG and BCPG, looking good, it's never easy. Alexander Berkovich, Naomi Campbell, such a bitch. Wanna be the Gaga to fit into my Prada. Oscar de la Renta, Louis Vuitton, imitation of Christ. Beauty has price.